Okay. Okay. Yes, they could. They could come if they want to also. Okay. Today we're going to start what I think is going to be 4 parts about washing dishes. We're doing Shulchan Tzadi Hey Sif Gimel Daled. The way I see it, I have it in my notes broken into 4 parts. That's the thing I'm going to do it. Is that the first is going to be just some background and some principles and understanding what the Mechaber and the Rambam say, just some of that stuff, just understand what's going on, so we can know where we're going. Then we're going to talk about washing dishes in a sink, like milk and inflation, so kosher and treif in the same sink. Then home dishwashers, and then commercial dishwashers. Okay, so and each one of those, they're all built on this first time. The rules, so to speak, the dinim, is really what goes on, is behind it, and then we'll see how they apply in each of those scenarios. I think realistically, I'm only going to do the first one today, although that'll probably be shorter, and then do each of the other parts afterwards. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is, because really everything hangs on, and that's why it's in Siman Tzadi Hey, is, remember Siman Tzadi Hey started with the dinim of not barnat. This is a continuation of those dinim. Okay, so first I'm going to review when we did not barnat, which was 2 times ago in this series. We came out that there are 8 rules of not barnat. For our purposes, anyhow, of course, there may be more details, but to us there are 8 primary rules, and it's like this. The rules go like this. There's a Hazara, it's a slide from that time also, and it's like this. You have, not barnat means is that if this heter, let's say milchiks or fleishiks, that was absorbed into a kli, it has to be heter. If it's isser, it doesn't work. If this heter, and the heter is not charif, then what happens is the tam of the heter, the heter gets absorbed into a kli, and then from there into another food. So, and it's not a double charif. Then that tam of heter becomes so weakened that when it would go into another food, if you cook a food afterwards, that food could be eaten with milk. Okay, that's what not barnat means. So there's the first 2 hard rules, so that has to be heter and not double charif. Third rule is you're not supposed to set up not barnat lechatchila, except if there's 3 knots. Okay, except if there's not barnat, then that's okay. Then you could set up. Then you're allowed to make not barnat lechatchila. Okay, now if not barnat, this is just a quick chazar. I'm sure you all remember this from this time. But okay, if not barnat is ID bishul, then even if it was made already, you can't eat it with power. You can't eat it with a milchik food. As opposed to beforehand, you weren't supposed to set up a not barnat, but once you did it, you could eat it with milchik. It's mutal chachil to do it, but not if it was ID bishul. But even if it's ID bishul, you could put it into a pot that had previously held something milchiks in it. That's okay, as long as there's no non-action milchiks. And it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. Not barnat ID bishul is not negeh if the kli was ein ben yarmah. You don't have to worry about not barnat ID bishul if it was ein ben yarmah. Okay. And the last thing is that all the rules of not barnat are only the kulas of not barnat is only if it's a blia. But if there's any residue, any food left behind, then there's no not barnat. Not barnat only works if we're talking about a blia and not pe'en. And all these, I don't know if every single one, but just about all 8 of these rules are going to come into play in maybe not today, but in the next few times. Each one of those things are going to make a difference. Okay, not barnat is very important. Again, that's why it's halacha gimel daled of this siman, because it's connected to halacha alf and days, which are about not barnat. Okay, so now the beginning din, the din of this sif says like this. What happens if we?
By double charif, even if the bli is a double charif, I thought there's this thing that's.
No, it's the bli that counts. With the thing that goes in, it doesn't. Not barnat means it gets weakened. As it goes through many knots, it gets weakened. If what goes in is charif, then that doesn't happen.
It's not if it's inserted into the charif.
No, fried onions in the milk of the pot, then
if what that's inserted into is a darukar, not the bli is darukar, but what is.
Okay, I don't remember. I'm confused. I think it's what goes in, but you're confusing me now.
fried onions in the milk of the
It's
pot.
inserted.
No, that's for a different reason. You think because that's not.
It's not barnat. Because most
He's
of
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. Sorry.
What the bli is charif.
Okay, the answer I don't remember. Okay, I don't remember. Okay, we'll look it up later. I don't remember. Okay. Okay, so now the Mechaber talks about, let me go back to Shulchan, even though you have to watch me go negative through all this stuff. Okay, the Mechaber is like this. If you have, you put, okay, I don't know. They wash their dishes in a sink, in a pot that was sitting on the fire. Okay, or it was in a cleavage that had just been taken off the fire. They had a big pot of hot water, and they would wash the dishes in it. So the Mechaber is like this: if you take fleshig dishes and you wash them in a milchig pot, or the other way around, same idea. Okay, then the dishes stay kosher. Okay, you have a pot, a cleavage that's on the fire, or it's a cleavage. It's in a cleavage. Then the din is that it's mutter. What?
No, this originally dirty when you put them in there.
No, we're going to get to that in a second. The dishes. I was going to say that. I'm going to get to
How
that.
do you
Just
plan wash clean dishes?
That's a really good question. I have no idea why you're washing clean dishes. That's a really good question.
No, then nothing down like three. There's 3 levels. There's soaking, there's washing, and then there's rinsing.
3-compartment sink. I don't think the Mechaber had a 3-compartment sink. I don't know. I don't understand. It's a good question because at the end he's going to say, "Yeah, but forget it. Hey guys, if it's dirty, then it doesn't work." So what?
And then the 3rd level was in the rinse cycle.
Right. So when we get to the next 3 times, we talk about the 3rd and 4th dishwashers. There's going to be negate. This is very good being negate. Why they did it, I'm clueless. Okay. So what happened is like this. So you wash the milchig plate in a what his case was a fleshig plate in a milchig pot. Of course, it would work the same way opposite. So it's not barnat. Why? Because the time that was absorbed into the fleshig plate only has a blia of fleshigs in it. Right? It's not a piece of meat. It has a blia of fleshigs. So that's one knot. Then the time goes from there into the water. The time goes from the meat into the plate, and from the plate into the water. That's not barnat. You can eat even with milchigs. You can eat that water even with cheese. So it goes to the milchig pot. Doesn't cause any problems. Okay, and the same the opposite. The time that's in the milchig pot. What's milchigs about? Because you cooked cheese in there a minute ago. Okay, so that was a bli into there. It goes into the water. That's not barnat, and it's that's the Mechaber says that's considered not barnat, and it's no problem. Okay. Now the Ramah says no. I don't buy that. Okay, the Ramah says it's not true. Well, it's a Machlokes Rishonim, of course. He says it doesn't qualify for not barnat. He doesn't say why, but the Tosfos has 2 reasons why it is. What's behind this thing? Why it should not be not barnat? One is that sometimes the fleshig plate will bang right into the milchig pot, and the time will transfer straight from the plate into the pot. Okay, so you won't have the water to take it in between. Well, the other version is that time from the plate and from the pot come together into the water. Okay, the point of both of these answers is, okay, it's a shayla is Taz and Shach. Which one is the ikar answer? But not so relevant. The point for us is like this. If the milchigs and fleshigs meet each other, then they become isser. So the first reason, you can only say not barnat if it's heter. So if it would just be milchigs or just be fleshigs, then we'd be fine. The problem here is that the milchigs and fleshigs are going to bang into each other and become basar b'chol. Either because the plate touches the pot and the time goes straight from one to the other, so it's basar b'chol, or the milchigs and fleshigs meet in the water and then again it becomes basar b'chol. Okay, the end result is that we're dealing with basar b'chol instead of basar and cholav, and therefore basar b'chol is not heter. You can't say not barnat if it's not heter. Okay, you can only say not barnat if it's heter, like basar b'chol, not basar b'chol. Okay. So that's why the Ramah is being machmir for such a shita. Maybe the Machlokes has to do with how quickly things meet, whatever it is. Okay, that's a Machlokes Rishonim. The Ramah says we should be machmir about if you wash the fleshig dish in a milchig pot. Okay, now, so the Ramah says, but you should know. So therefore, now that I just told you what the reason to be machmir is, the only reason you only have to be machmir in a case where you're washing milchig, fleshig plate in a milchig pot. What happens if it was a parv pot? Okay, so there's no problem with blios happening when I put the fleshig plate into there. There's no problem with blios happening now. There's no milchigs there to join together with it. It's a parv pot. So and I put the milchig plate into there. So then that's fine. And then the truth is, I could then wash milchig dishes in there also in the same thing. Okay, I could then. I can use the same water to wash milchig dishes afterwards also. Because, again, when I put in the fleshig pot, what happened? I put the fleshig plate in, it was not barnat. That water could be eaten with milk if you wanted to. So now if I put a milchig plate into there, it's also okay. The only problem was because the milchigs and fleshigs are there at the same time. If I did them separately, the Ramah said that would be okay. Okay. Another thing is, the Ramah says, the only time we have to worry about this is when Tom can actually transfer between the plate and the pot. But if Tom can't transfer between the plate and the pot, then there's no problems. So, for example, he says if it's Eina ben Yomri, or if it's not yet, if it's not, it's a klisheni. So then Tom doesn't transfer. So if Tom doesn't transfer, again, we don't have a problem. Okay? So our chumrah is in a very specific case, and that the case was it was a milchig pot and a fleshig plate or the other way around. So there's potential for the tam hitting each other, one hitting the other one, and then we'd have a problem of creating isser, in which case we won't have not burn. Okay, now, then the Machaber says what David said before him, which is, you want to see the screen again? Yeah. Okay, not all dramas on there. You can see the street, that's because my screen is only that big. So when I get to a certain point, I cut you out. Okay, okay, so now, then the Machaber says something that the Ramah obviously agrees to, and that is you can only be makel. This whole din, this thing of washing dishes, the tzad lahakol is because it's of not barnat. So he says we can only be makel if the plates are clean. But if there's any food on them, if there's any shuman on them, if there's any actual fleshings on them, then I haven't answered your question. Then if there's any fleshings, any shuman on them, then it doesn't work because not barnat only works for Blios. It doesn't work for the end. Okay, and so Mistama, now I'm talking about it, I'm realizing that the answer probably to David's question is, why are you washing dishes? Is because you ate rice and potatoes. Maybe you need some fleshings on there. Okay, you didn't need any shuman, so it's a fleshig dish, but there's no more shuman left in it. Or, according to another case, like let's say it's a tiny bit left, which is bottle, that will also be okay. But the point is, usually it's not bottle, but you had rice and potatoes, you had spaghetti, so you're washing your dishes, but the dishes, they're fleshig dishes, because before you ate meat in them, but there's no be'en left in them. Okay, so the Machaber says there's no not barnat in case of be'en, so therefore you'll have to ask her. He says shuman double be'en, then because if there's actual fleshings left onto there, then it would have to be built b'shishim. If it was just other foods, then you don't need shishim. Just potatoes, then you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's the first part. That's the main part of this din about washing dishes. Okay, then the Machaber says in Halachos Daled, Machaber says in Halachos Daled like this: Yeroli. He says something that's not coming from Rishonim, his own idea. That's why he starts with the Yeroli. Okay, it doesn't come from Rishonim. If you put in Ephah, I'm going to tell you what that means in a second. You put in ashes into the water. Then I told you that if there's shuman davak onto it, then there's a problem. Right? If there's the end, then you can't say not barnat. He said, but that's only true if there's just plain water in there. But if there's Ephah in there, then it's nice tam with tam, and then tam we don't have to worry about tam transferring. Which is to say is, before I tell you the detail, which is to say is like this. In order for something to happen here, tam has to go from the fleshig plate into the milchig pot, or the other way around, or from the shuman into the milchig pot. Okay, but for the time that transfers through the water, that only happens if the water is plain water. If the tam will be nus tam lefgam, if it will be pogum as it passes through, then tam won't transfer. We don't have to worry about it. So this is fleshig, this is milchig. The fleshig tam becomes pogum as it transfers from the plate to the pot, and therefore we don't have to worry about it. Okay, that's what he's trying to say. Okay, so now let's just a little details like this. Okay, the first thing is he says if you put Ephah into the water. Okay. What's with Ephah? Why is anybody putting ashes into the water where they're washing dishes? Okay, what kind of kooky case did he come up with? And the answer is it's a very real case. I'm going to bring you a slide that you for sure will remember. I'm sure from when we did alcoholic beverages, and these are alcoholic beverages slides. You'll see the colors are different. Okay, and that is like this. This is fat. Okay, this is a fat molecule. On the left side, what you see on the left side, the purplish, that's glycerin, and what you see on the right side, those are fatty acids. Okay, this is what every fat and oil has, that structure. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's glycerin on one side and fatty acids attached. 3 fatty acids.
It's in the.
This is a fat. Okay, this is a fat oil. It is, yeah. Glycerin attached to fatty acid. That's what it is. That's what fat or oil is the same thing. Fat or oil is the same thing. They're all glycerin with fatty acid. Depending on the fatty acid, depends on which fat or oil you get. That's what makes the differences between them. But I don't know, olive oil and animal fat have the same general structure. Okay, that's what fat looks like. Now, if you add to that a base, you add a base into that. In the picture, it's a sodium hydroxide, like lye, which is what we would do. Okay, but if you add a base into it, that's how you do it in modern days. If you add a base into it, what happens is it breaks it up. Actually broke art in. It breaks up the fat, and the fat attack becomes the structure on the left, which becomes glycerin. It's not actually glycerin before, but it becomes glycerin, and the one on the right becomes soap. Okay, so that's what happens when you add a strong base to an oil or fat. You end up with
soap.
What?
What does that mean? It becomes soap.
That's what soap is.
Now, what's soap? Now, I know what you use it for.
That's what it is. Okay, so soap, what the point is, that molecule, soap molecule, has half of the soap molecule is attracted to water, half is attracted to oils, and so therefore it helps break them apart and get them as a surfactant. Okay,
And emulsifier.
emulsify helps things come. Yeah, it's similar to that. Yeah, it's similar to that. Okay, so
Opposite of emulsifier.
no, it helps. It takes the oil and it helps it get diluted into the water. So it takes the grease that's stuck onto your plate.
That's why when you take a shower, you
Oh, you're saying what it ends up being. The fatty acid ends up being an emulsifier.
No, it ends up being a soap. Okay, it's not a fatty acid, but now it's fatty acid attached to whatever, and it turns into a soap. Okay, a sodium salt of a fatty acid. Okay, we don't call it fatty acid, but now it's a sodium salt of a fatty acid, and then that functions as a soap. Okay, it's a surfactant. It helps remove greasy stuff from your food because it attaches to the oil and to the water and lifts them off. Okay. Anyhow, so the point is, without knowing how it works, that's how you make soap. That's how they made soap 1,000 years ago, and that's how they make soap today. It's the exact same thing they make like that. Okay.
Afer had that soap.
Afer is burnt wood has not sodium hydroxide, it's potassium hydroxide, okay, and it's a strong base. So if you put burnt ashes, if you're washing dishes and you put burnt ashes into there, what's going to happen is the burnt ashes are going to turn the oil, the grease that's left on your plate into soap, and it's going to clean off your dishes. Okay, so that's why they would put Afer into the thing. That's why the people put Afer into their dishes. What a crazy case! He didn't get it from Rishon. He made up the case. What would happen if someone has ashes in their thing? What happens if there's a shoe in your thing? No, they just put shoes in their dishwasher. But the point is, it was Afer because if you put Afer, that's what makes your dishes clean. The Afer doesn't make dishes clean. The Afer combines with now we're talking about the science. The Afer combines with the oil to create a fat, to create a soap, and the soap cleans off your dishes. Okay, so that's what the Mechaber is. Right,
So that cleans up itself, basically.
Right.
Trying to
it basically creates soap. Right,
It's all fat.
it becomes its own soap.
Makes it
It's
all-
amazing.
yes. Okay. So that's what it works. Okay, so I don't know if they understood science. The point was they made soap.
Why is that very funny? It's amazing.
Okay, so in case you have some leftover, burn some wood in your backyard, you could stick it, stop using soap. You could just use it. Anyhow.
You have some sodium hydroxide.
Well, toilet bowl cleaner. Yeah, toilet bowl cleaner is lye. So if you want to put that in, wash your dishes with it, that's true. That's also, it's a lye. It's good. Right. Anyhow, so now, if you notice, back to the Mechaber for a second, the Mechaber is like this. It says you put an Afer in, and the Mechaber says is you put it in koidem shehinichu hakderes b'socha. Okay, if there was Afer, meaning Afer in the water before you put the kederes in, then don't worry about the time transferring. Okay, so why does he say you put it in before? Okay, so there's a machlokes and nachronim about this point.
What's the question? Don't answer my question.
Is there any
This is first, and you already made everything.
So
Why
I
you peg in the water? It's the same way.
so the answer is like this. So I'm coming to that. So some achronim say is the reason is because if you put the dishes in first and you put the dirty dishes in and the time transfers to the other one, what would it help to put the soap in later?
Oh, we'll be pegging the water. Same
So who cares? The water's not what we want. You want to have the dish. The dish became tray for ready. So some achronim say I'm trying to give you some names over here. The Chavas Das says because if you put the soap in afterwards, it's too late because the dish already became tray. What does it help to put in soap afterwards? Okay, and that's what the Chavas Das says. The Chazon Ish goes like that. Okay, you know this Chazon Ish from a different place. The Chazon Ish says that's what goes on. And the crazy placey says, nah, what are you talking about? The same way that if you can put the soap in afterwards, the Mechaber just put the case up. That's how you normally wash dishes. He says because when you put the soap in, now the soap will be nice time of God into the dish. That soap, the time from the nice time of God will also go into the dish. So just like the flesh should go into the dish, so too the soap will go into the dish.
So you don't have to catch it.
So because.
You just put egg for it.
So this, you know this. I'm now going to remind you how you all know this, that until, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, everybody always said, and older Rabbanim will still say is, that if you want to be Pegimah something, what do you want to not be, wait to be in the binyan, if you want to be Pegimah, all you do is put it, let's say you want to be Pegimah silverware. Put the silverware into water that's Yad Tzaled, display the soap in it. And as long as the water is Yad Tzaled display and there's soap in it, the soap gets absorbed into the fork, and then you can touch the fork even though it's Ben Yoimai. It's Ben Yoimai. No, there's Pogum inside, the Blios of Gam. That's what that's what everybody used to say, like the crazy placey. That the soap gets absorbed into the fork, and now the fork is pogum. Like you said, that the fork is pogum now. Okay, came on the Chazon Ish, who essentially was saying what the Chavaz says. He says, wait a second, how do you know that the soap went in? If the dishes are together and the soapy water, the only way to tell them to get from here to there is to pass through the soap. So it's going to pick up the Pegimah with it. But how do you know otherwise that Pegimah went in? Pegimah is when we say Blios are a chumrah, maybe the Bli went in. Who says the Bli went in?
If you put it, to kashrus, to rice.
So the Chazon says, if you put it to a kashrus temperature, then we say, look, the time for sure came out. If it gets reabsorbed, it'll get reabsorbed with the soap. That's the Chazon says that's fine. You could do that. But the idea that you could just put it into Yatz leather spy is that's what he's disagreeing with, and it's a machlokas. That's why I'm here in this din on this shayla when the Mechaber says koidim shenichu, the Mechaber need dafka koidim, which is what the Chavaz is, what the Chazon Ish would say. The Chazon Ish I don't think points to this din, but that's the Chazon Ish. It's coming from the Chavaz, and the crazy place he says, not dafka. That's just the normal thing you would have done like that, but it would have worked just fine the other way around.
Why do you want to Kashrus with water that's problem?
Why? Because they don't have to wait 24 hours.
You don't have to wait 24 hours. You're trying to avoid the 24 hours.
But if you don't wait 24 hours, then
In order to avoid 24 hours, so that it's
So some people
to just kasher with
davar apayim.
but then that's not a different issue because you can.
I'm asking.
It's not today's discussion. Why you're allowed to do that. But put that on the side. Assuming you want to be payim. Let's say you say you're going to be payim. Do you have to be payim at Reitzchen, or do you have to be payim at just Yatz leather spy? According to crazy place, just do Yatz leather spy. Again, older Rabbanim all said like that. Younger Rabbanim, okay, I'm maybe insult people, I tell them old or younger. Younger people all know the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish says, how do you know that the Bli is going to go in? How do you know such a thing? Which is really the Chavaz does. Okay. So that's why the Mechaber says that you have to put it in before. Okay, now, within this Mechaber who said this yearly, that there's this idea that if you put an Afer, then the time gets transferred. Okay, there's a whole to do in Lachreinim. Lots of people have what to say about whether it's true or not. Okay, lots of people question whether putting Afer in is good enough to say that it prevents bleeds from happening. But if you look at it, you'll see that the people who are arguing about whether Afer is good enough to be payim. Is it true that putting an Afer will be nice tam of gam? Is that lamaisa that's giving nice tam of gam? But everybody that I saw is essentially saying if it was really pogum, they're not arguing on the concept that if the thing is really pogum, there shouldn't be a problem. They're just arguing will Afer be enough to make it say it's nice tam of gam? Okay, like for example, he says that I don't know, they're doing a tzemach tzedek, the earlier tzemach tzedek. About when you have real soap in there, or like more seriously horrible stuff, everyone's agreeing on the conception, which is because the concept comes from Simkuf Gimel, which is that a nice time of gam, time can't transfer when it's pogum. So on the conceptually they're agreeing. The question is whether the Afer. Okay, so now. A whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of people are arguing about whether what the Mechaber says is this correct, but then
Afer works off
whether Afer is that thing
whether
that
Afer
could be pogum, correct? But that there's conceptually that such that if you had the right thing in there, I don't see people disagreeing with that. Again, that's really different Kuf Gimel that have a nice time of gam is not a problem. Okay, so just the details you see people arguing is about the Afer angle of it. Is Afer what causes the problem? Okay, and but now what's actually interesting which is right on come to, I'm going to be finishing soon, but actually I'm coming to is that what's really strange is that why didn't they just say it depends on how it tastes like? Why didn't somebody go taste it? Okay, and the truth is this is going to be again to us as you go on, and you may remember a famous picture. As you go on, is that really when you decide that something is that I put soap in, I put X material in, and therefore it's pogum, you really have to taste it. You have to see really it is pogum. Okay, and I mean once, like about 10 years ago, they had an aqua conference also in Toronto, and they spoke to Sean Miller, did a question and answer there, and he made this point, not in this case, but the same idea, which was if you want to say that soap in water is going to be pogum, he says you're going to have to taste it. You have to figure it out. Okay, and you may remember Sham Zalman has a truth about that, about saying things are nifsal mechila. It's a variation, but the same general idea. He says you assume things are nifsal mechila. He says really, the Gemara has a shaila about meraglaim shel chamar whether they're nifsal mechila. He says, everybody would have thought it's Nifsal Mechila, right? He said, but guess what? You won't know until you try it. Okay, so, so the Gemara is something. To all of us say, oh, of course, it's Nifsal Mechila. Really? He says, I don't know. He says, I never tried it. I know he said that. He says, I never tried it, but the Gemara is not sure if it is. It's shy on the Gemara whether if it's Nifsal Mechila. So the point being is that you should be cautious in just saying no matter what. And that's going on in the Mechaber. The Mechaber said that Efer is Pogum, and other are not so convinced that Efer is Pogum. I'm saying it's not automatic. That's not what that is for Pogum. Okay? And one last thing is, there's a Shaila Nachronim, a Machlokes Nachronim, whether this idea that you could make something Pogum, is that mutter to do it l'chatchila? Okay? Is that allowed? Is the Mechaber saying it's mutter, or is he saying that it's only mutter b'diavad that it was done? Okay, the Tzemach Tzedek, again the earlier one, says that it's also presumably as a type of a bitul l'chatchila. Okay, no, so you're not going to make nothing's going to happen, but presumably it's a type of bitul l'chatchila, which is to say is he be understanding that when we say ein v'atul l'chatchila doesn't just mean if something is 100 to 1 it's okay. Don't do that. Because it's still, you're getting the Isra into your food. It means any way of getting Isra closer to you. Here it's not a question of Bitul. Here it's a question of Lefgam. So he's assuming that Bitul, Lechatchila, includes making things Lefgam or other ways to get Tam into things. Other ways to get the treif into the kosher is what you're not supposed to do. Chazal weren't specific to Shishim kind of thing. And Chacham Tzvi says that it's mutter, that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with making Bitul, so to speak, with causing Lefgam to happen Lechatchila. The truth is, we
still need Bitul B'Roiv. That's right. It's Kavanah Tzemach Tzedek is we still need Bitul B'Roiv.
Because you're saying after the Pogum Tam will come in, they'll still have to be Bitul B'Roiv, so it's a type of Bitul L'Chatchila, because L'maisi you're being Samach on Bitul. Okay, I didn't think about that. That's a way of saying it. Yes. Even Nefsal L'Fgam, unless it's Nefsal Mi'achila, it needs to be Bitul B'Roiv. The Davar Pogum Tam.
Right? The fact it's not like Tam anymore. It's only Bitul B'Roiv.
Yeah, right,
so in the end, you're being Samech HaBitul. So Ein Vatel L'Chachil, L'maisi, you're being Samech HaBitul. You're saying, I know it's going to be Batel B'Roiv. It's going to be Mutter because it's going to be Batel. Not Batel B'Shish, it'll be Batel B'Roiv.
Some of things, and every become a minute all
just that's why he's saying why you shouldn't do it L'Chatchila. You shouldn't do it L'Chatchila. Right, I'm saying is maybe they just, when Chazal asked it, Ein Vatel, they meant all types of things.
Kashrus is also a Bitul.
Every kashering,
because it's Mashra still not there.
because it's Ein Ben Yomei, so it's L'Fgam, and then in the end that's the
Okay. The Shah said, right, my Master Mr. Chatkil says, oh, you go with the Ein Ben Yomei. So we can wait, what do you mean by it's still coming home to Bitul?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, and now the truth is, I have to just say something. I just told you two extremes. I would have thought there would be in between over here. That's what I would have thought. But I would have thought the in between is like this: the Isser to cause a Pegimah is when you start with Isser. Like let's say you go to a treif hotel and you're kashering the hotel. So you say there, don't be samach on Pegimah because you have Isser. Don't you be vatal Isser. But in this case, you're not being vatal Isser. You're just preventing Isser. It's basar and chol. They're both kosher. You're just preventing Isser. So the soap is standing in the way of basar and chol mixing together. I didn't say, but it's not the same when you're just standing and putting the soap in between. You're saying, don't let the meat. That's a different angle. Maybe the machlokes is doing income loss. I'm not trying to be involved in anything. I'm trying to prevent an issue from happening as opposed to when I do with the head. Okay, it's not again. That's the machlokes. There is such a machlokes. So, in the next 3 times, we're going to do next time about washing dishes. This will do with washing dishes and the same thing. Then dishwashers, and then commercial dishwashers.